welcome back to 100 Days Machine Learning Crash Course. In this session, we want to talk a little about Python and introduce Python to you. And so you should just know that it is just an introduction to Python, and we don't go too much deep in Python. And yeah, so let's start that. I think it is very necessary for data scientists to use Python. We will see why the Python is very popular language among the data scientists or machine learning engineer or startups. Okay. Now, okay, let's go with this. So you should just know that, again, I tell you this is just for beginners. So if you have some experience in Python, maybe this is you could skip these sessions, or you should not have the expectation to be expert in Python programming after watching these sessions. So okay, let's go. The first question is that, okay, why Python? There are lots of other languages like C, C++, Java, Ruby. There are lots of other programming languages, but why Python? The first answer to this question is that if you want to be Python programmer, it has very large community, and there are lots of other programmers who code in Python. So this is great for you. Why? Because when you have a problem, you could just search that in Google, then there are lots of answers probably to your problem. So this is great because lots of people code in Python. The second reason is that it is very easy to use. We will see that, but before that, maybe it is better to just see that in here. I will explain that what is this, but just for now, Python is very easy to use. Let's say you want to write a hello world program. In Python, you just need to write hello world. That's it. Okay, you will see that it's done. But if you want to write a similar program in C, you should actually have main function, and it is actually takes lots of effort in comparison with Python to write it in C or C++ or Java. So lots of startups or companies use Python to test their approaches or methods. Then maybe they use C to optimize their Python codes or something like that. So and if you see lots of data scientists or machine learning engineers who don't want to really involve with Python, who really don't want to involve with programming or coding, they use Python because it is very easy. It is very understandable language. And the third reason is that there are lots of packages and libraries for Python. This is one of the most important reasons, is that why lots of people choose Python. If you want to work with numbers or matrix multiplication or this kind of a stuff, you have NumPy. If you want to use deep learning things. There are Keras, there are TensorFlow, PyTorch for Python, and this kind of things. Literally, there are lots of packages and libraries to work with. If you are in if you want to open very large file, there are lots of packages to do that, to actually work with big data. And actually, this is one of the main reasons of choosing Python. Okay, so I hope that until now you are convinced to why we use Python for this 100 days machine learning crash course, or for many startups. Okay, let's continue. We have two different categories of programming languages. The first ones have compiler to run program, and the second one has interpreter to run the code. And okay, what is the difference between interpreter languages and compiler languages? Compiler languages like C, C++, Java, and etc. There are compiler languages, and interpreter languages like Python, I think Ruby, and some others as interpreter instead of compiler. What is the difference between compiler languages and interpreter languages? When you have compiler, you should write your whole program. Like in C, you should write maybe your main, then all of your function. Then we have a compiler which scan all of your programs. Then if there are no syntax error or other kind of errors, then it converts it to exe or some machine codes. Then you could run that. But in interpreter, this is actually maybe the most important difference for us. I mean, not as an advanced programmer, maybe for advanced programmer these are more important, but for us this is the most important difference. But in interpreter languages like Python, when you want to run your code, there is no exe or executive file. It just runs line by line. So if you have statement 1, statement 2, statement 3, and in this line you have an error, then if this is in C, then the compiler gives you error at first, and it does not start your program at all. But in Python, it runs this line, runs this line, runs this line. In this line, it throws you an error. Okay, so it actually does not scan all of your program at first, but it runs your program line by line. Okay, and this could be memory efficient because it does not require to scan all of your program at first. So this is maybe the most important difference. Okay, now let's start with Python installation. If you are Windows user, please do a step by step based on this tutorial to install Python on your Windows. Okay. First, you should go to the Python .org, as you could see in here, and download the Python for your based on your Windows. If you have 64-bit Windows, you should download this version. And maybe it is better to now work with Python 3.7. Actually, there are two main versions of Python there. 2.7 or version 2, which are 2.4, 2.5, 2.6, and 2.7, and Python 3. There are minor differences between Python 2 and Python 3, but maybe nowadays most of the programmers are shifting toward Python 3, so maybe it is better to download Python 3 in this course instead of Python 2. So based on your preference, download Python 3 or Python 2. Then this is the installation for Python. Okay. The installation for Python, this step is very important. If you are in Windows, just click and check this add python.exe to path. So this is so important to set your environment variables, to let the Windows know you have Python, and you will have access through Python interpreter in CMD or in your command prompt. Okay, after that, in your Windows directory you will have the Python, whether it is Python 2 or it is Python 3. Okay, to test your Python installation and make sure that Python is installed, open your CMD or command prompt. For doing that, just in the search box of your Windows, type CMD, then open that. Now you will have something like this. Then you should type Python, then hit the enter. Then you should have something like this. You will go to the interpreter mode. Now you could actually write your program in here. Okay, so this is the installation of Python interpreter. Okay, when you install Python interpreter, you could code in anything, then run that with Python interpreter. But we actually need a nice environment with some nice features to develop our codes in that. As you could see, developing code in this environment maybe is a little hard, and sometimes it is not very neat to code in here. So we use IDE, which is integrated development environment for coding. For Python, there are actually lots of IDEs for Python, but one of the most popular IDE for Python is Pycharm. So you could go to the Pycharm website and download the community version, which is free for the Windows, or even for the Linux users, they could download the community version. Okay, after that, install Pycharm with this configuration. If you have 64-bit Windows, check this, or if you have 32-bit Windows, check this one. And okay, for testing, actually you should hit the create new project. Then this is one of the most important steps for configuration of Pycharm. In here, you should actually tell the Pycharm, okay, where is the interpreter, where is the Python interpreter, because Pycharm itself is just an IDE, which is kind of advanced text editor with some features for Python, but it doesn't have Python interpreter itself. So you should point to the Pycharm that, okay, here is my Python interpreter. So click on existing interpreter, then you will see system, then click on system interpreter, then you will see your Python interpreter path, whether it is Python 2.7 or Python 3.7 or something like that. And as an advice for now, please don't install, for just now, please don't install Python 3.7. If you want to install Python 3, install Python 3.6 or below 3.7, because 3.7 is very brand new version of Python. So some of the package like TensorFlow doesn't have support for Python 3.7 now. Okay, then right click on your project directory, then click on Python file, then for just testing, write print. If you have Python 2, in Python 2, now as you could see in here, I have Python 2. You could write print hello world, as you could see in here. Then from the run section, you just see the run, and then click on that and run your program. Then you will see the output of your program in here. But if you have Python 3, you could not write this. In Python 3, one of the difference between Python 2 and Python 3 is that the print function needs parentheses, as you could see in here. You should write it like this in Python 3. So it is minor actually difference, but you could use this in Python 2, but you could not use this in Python 3. Okay. Now, if you see the output, congratulations, you installed and configure both Python interpreter and the Pycharm IDE successfully. So congratulations. If not, please write your given error in a Slack channel and ask your questions there. I will answer it as soon as possible. Then you should actually check your package manager is installed successfully. Until now, we installed Python interpreter and the IDE for Python development. But we know that there are lots of packages that we want to use after we learn. For example, when we learn scikit-learn or sklearn, we want to install that. So we should have kind of package manager or library manager for Python. The default package manager of Python is pip. There is another very famous Python package manager, which is Anaconda or Conda, but we just now work with pip. So if you installed your Python interpreter correctly, you should just have Python package manager also as default in your CMD. So in your CMD, just write pip or pip, then you will get something like this. Okay, then to test that it works correctly, just type pip install numpy. In this line we just install numpy package. For example, we will get familiar with what is numpy package, but for just now we just want to check the pip manager. So it downloads the package and install that. If anything goes wrong in here, please again contact me, then I will tell you the solution. So because maybe there are some kind of issues in there, so don't scare or afraid of these, and they are all solvable. So this is the installation of Python and Pycharm in the Windows. But if you are Linux user, for the Ubuntu distribution, I will tell you how you should install Python in Ubuntu. So if you have Ubuntu, probably you will have Python 3 installed on your device automatically and by default. So great. But maybe and you could access the interpreter with Python 3 to just check that the Python 3 is installed. And for accessing pip, maybe pip is not installed by default, so for installing pip, you could just do that with one line in Ubuntu, or as a Linux user with just one line with apt install Python 3 pip. Okay, so that's easy. Then you will have the pip, and to access your pip for Python 3 you should write pip3. Okay, now this is important also for the Windows users. If you use Python 3, you should use pip3. If you use Python 2, you should use Python and pip. Okay, as you could see in here, because I want to use Python 3 in here, I should write Python 3. Okay, now if I want to install package for Python 3, I should use pip3. Okay, and in here you should be able to write the same thing in here. So as you could see, it is okay on my system. Okay, now all done, and we are ready to go through Python. Please do whatever I do step by step to learn the Python. Okay. The first thing in any programming languages is the way that you want to store data in that language. Let me to maybe in here. Okay, maybe in here. Let me to create a project in here, Python tutorial, then open Pycharm. Please do this with me to getting familiar with Python. Okay, now open the Python tutorial from here from Python. Open this directory as project, then write create Python file named test. Okay. You could just configure your interpreter also from here. Maybe you install both Python 2 and Python 3, and in here you could set your Python interpreter. So if it is no interpreter, then you could actually use one of the interpreters in here. I use Python 3.6. The inter-project interpreter, you could have you could see your installed package in this window. So as you could see, maybe you are familiar with NumPy. So as you could see, I have NumPy, and this is the version of NumPy, and this also tells the latest version and tell you, okay, you could upgrade this. You have this version, and this version is available, and this kind of things. Okay. After setting the interpreter, click on apply and OK. Okay. Now please do this. Now you are in this environment. The first thing that every program needs is to store variables. We need to somehow store data in some variables or other forms in Python. We will introduce all of these ways for saving and storing data in Python. First, we will introduce primitive variables in Python, which are probably you know about them, the integers, the floats, the strings, and Boolean values. Like any other languages, the Python have these primitive values, primitive variables. But if you want to be more, if you are more advanced programmer, maybe actually in Python everything is object of class. So if you are beginner, you could just ignore my current speaking. It is not very important, but if you have some experience in Python, maybe it is interesting for you that everything in Python is an object. So the integer itself is an object from integer class, and all of these are actually objects from different class. Okay, the second way to store data are list. We will see when we use list. Actually, maybe this is the most common way for data scientists to store data and work with data in Python. The third way for storing data is dictionary. When we want to have some kind of key and value, we will see its explanation later. Okay, and we will see tuples. Actually, the tuples are very like lists, but they are immutable. So we will not use tuples so much, but when you have Python functions that, for example, returns multiple values, the Python returns them as tuples. So maybe tuples are more used by Python, not us as a programmer. Okay, and the next one is set, which has the same definition in set in mathematics. Actually, in list you could have 1 1 1, but if you know the definition of set, in set you are not allowed to have repetitive member. So if you define this set, and convert that to set in Python. After that, your set just have one member, okay, and this is 1. And it is less common to use set in Python, but we will introduce also sets in Python. Maybe in some cases they are useful for you. Okay. So the first types of variables are primitive variables. As I told you, in Python, primitive variables are floats, integers, strings, and this kind of things. But technically, maybe as I told you, they are really different from primitive variables in Java or C, because they are objects from integer class, for example, or float class. Okay. Now, these variables, whether they are int, float, or a string, there are some built-in functions in Python which are very useful when you work with variables. The first built-in function is type. Okay. Now, let's say you define a variable in here, maybe, and this is float. We know that. The great thing about Python is that you don't need to define the type of A. Python automatically detects that as and defines that as float. In comparison, in C, if you want to do that, you should write float of A is equal to something. You should explicitly define the type of your variable, but in Python it determines that automatically. Okay, let us define another variable which is int, then define boolean value, then define a string, welcome to Python. Okay, now we want to print the type of A, type of B, and the great thing about the print function is that you could just add more print with actually just adding commas and pass your printing arguments in here. Okay, now just for running this, you should just go in here and click on that. Instead of that, you could hold Alt plus Shift plus F10. So when you run that, just run your test file, then you will see the type of the variables. As you could see, all of them are from class of float, class of integer, class of boolean, and class of a string. Okay, so this is great in Python that it automatically determine the type of your variable. So the first built-in function in Python which you know about now is type function. Okay, so type is done. Sometimes you will have some float and you want to round and truncate some of the digits. Let's say this is your accuracy of your machine learning model, and maybe that is 95.32, 145%, then you just want to show that to user the accuracy is for writing the variable in here. You could just write in this way. Okay, if you print this, if you run this program, you will see that it is print something like this, but it is not very important for the user that the accuracy is maybe 3, 2, 1, 4, 5. You know, this is too much for the user, especially if it has some more digits. Okay, for this you could use round. The round will truncate your floating number till the digit that you want. For example, if I want to just print to here, so I just want 2 digits after the dot, I just put it 2. So if you run that now, you will have very more neat way of printing the accuracy or something like that. There are some minor difference between rounding in Python 2 and Python 3, but for the rounding up and down, if I change it to, as you could see now, I have the output 95.33, but if I convert that, change that to 1, I will have 95.32, which is round down. Okay, so if you want to know the exact difference between the round function in Python 2 and Python 3, you could read the documents, but they are not actually maybe necessary for now. Okay. Okay, the next method is actually sometimes you want to convert, for example, float to integer, or you want to explicitly define the type of your variable. For example, maybe I want in here Python itself defines the b as integer, but I want to define that as float. I could just write the float in here. Now if I print type of b, I will get float. Okay, very simple. The same you could apply on a string. If you want to convert your float into string, you could just put str in here. Now this is a string. If you want to make sure that it is a string, you could print its type. Okay, it is a string. Now you know that the Python primitive variables, how to store your variables in Python. Okay, now this is great. Okay. Let's go to the next step of the methods that the string have? One of the most important types of variables are string. This string class has very useful built-in methods in Python to work with strings. Why string is so important, and we want to explain it more other than float or integer built-in function, because when you read your dataset probably as text file or CSV file, something like this, maybe height and some data, you will read that text file as a string. So it is very important to know how to work with the strings. Okay, this is why that we want to learn more about Python built-in methods for strings. The first useful method for a string is isDigit. The isDigit tells you whether a string is digit or not. If I have something like this and I print isDigit in here, I will get true because 72 is digit. But let's say I have this. As you could see, if I have float, because of that I don't have isDigit anymore in here, because it is just for integers. It does not know that the dot is for the floating number. And also, if you have a string contains a digit, also you will get false, because now the first part is not digit. So maybe you before, let's say that you want to convert your string variable to int. If I tell the Python e is equal to int of d, then what happens? In this case, you will get error from Python. It tells you, okay, I can't convert that to integer because I don't know what is this. So for checking that, we will learn how to use condition, but for now, just for doing that, I could just put it in a condition that if it was a digit, convert that to integer, else print it is not an integer. Okay, now if I run that, I get it is not an integer. But if I run this, just this line runs correctly and okay. Okay. The second method is find. Sometimes we want to find something in a string. Let's say you have my name is Mehdi, then I just print d.find. As you could see in here, it gives you some hint about what you should have. It is self means that it is a built-in function for, it is a built-in method for d, which is a string, and it will get substring from you. Maybe I want to know Okay, if I run that now, I will get 8. What is this? It is index for starting this substring. As you could see in here, I could just print D0. D0 is M, which is, this is 0, this is D1, D2, D3, and so on. So as you could see in here, D1, D0, D1, D2, D3, D4, D5, D6, D7, and the substring that I want to find is a start from the index 8. As you could see in here, this is the output of find. And if I just write something that is not in the string, it returns -1. It means that your string does not contain your substring that you want to find in that string. So you could also put some conditions in here that for your program, which could be helpful for you. Okay, the next one is lower. Actually, lower and upper, both of them maybe are useful in some sense. Okay, let me use lower and upper. Let's say we write this one. Okay, as you could see, the Python returns -1 because my string does not contain this substring with lowercase m, but maybe it is not important for me that this is lower or uppercase. So first, one way for determining that whether this string contains this substring or not is that first I convert D to lowercase string. Just let's print that. As you could see here, when you run the lower method, it converts all of the characters to the lowercase. As you could see in here, the upper does the opposite thing. It converts all of the characters to the uppercases. So if I convert them to lower cases, then print find Mehdi. Now we will find this, although this is uppercase, started with uppercase, but because first we convert that to lowercase, then we will find that. It is not important that somebody write Mehdi in this way. Okay, again we will find that. Okay, and it is also maybe useful for putting some conditions in your program flow. The next method is a split. It is very useful maybe for strings. Let's say you read your data set in this way. You know that it is, the height is maybe something like this, age is 23, and okay, name is Jack. Okay, and you want to split these the different parts of of your string, okay, because you want to store each of them in different variables. For doing this, split is very useful method. If you run split method, it takes an argument from you. If you don't pass anything to it, it just consider that you want to split your string based on the spaces. So then you will have something like space or tab in your string. It split that. As you could see here, we will have a list, which we will see that in the next part. But as you could see now, I have this part as a separate thing, then I have this part, because after that I have a space, after that I have this part, and so on. But if I want to separate them after specific character, in here I have comma in here, I just put that character in here. So as you could see now, this is the first element, then this will goes to the second element, and this will goes to the third element, okay? And this is so useful for reading dataset and working with datasets. And also we have a strip. Sometimes when you read a text file, at the end of text file maybe there are some extra spaces or inters. If you don't know in Python, and maybe in most of the languages, the inter is specified with this backslash and n, okay? It means an inter. Maybe you have something like this at the end of file, because when you have a text file, maybe your dataset is something like this, and at the end of that maybe you will have some kind of these characters, although you cannot see them in your text editor, but they exist when you put them, okay? For removing this part, you could just write strip. It actually removes all of the spaces and inters in here, maybe at the end of your string. If you want to just remove the inters at the end of this, at the right side of your string, you could just put R in here. But if you want to also remove them in this part, you could write L for just left, and for both sides you could just use strip method, okay? Better to also introduce you the conditions in Python. So if you want to put some condition in your program, as you probably know, you could write if, then in here you will have your condition, then you should put colon in here. Then maybe you see that in C or other languages, for writing your if or functions, you need curly brackets to define the scope of your conditions or loops or anything else. But in Python you will specify that with indent. In here it could be tab or 4 spaces or anything like that. So when I write if then condition for writing the executions for running after the condition, I could just put tab or four spaces to do them in here. For example, let's say print condition is satisfied. Okay, then you could write else in here is not satisfied. Okay, for example, in here maybe I just want to check that if accuracy is greater than 95, then the program prints the condition is satisfied. Okay, so it will get there, and after that it skips this else because it goes through this, and so it skips this else and go there. Maybe it is better to put something in here so the condition is satisfied, then finished. And as you could see, the indent of this print is different from this, because this is not for the else. This is just for the main program. Okay, so you should be aware always to the indent in Python. Okay. Sometimes you want to have different cases for your if and else if something statements. For example, I want to know that, okay, if accuracy is less than 30%, and the great thing about Python is that you could just write it like languages. Okay, as you could see, instead of using this logical AND, which is in C, you could just write AND like languages in here. If accuracy is below than 30 and it is greater than 10, then I don't know, write the accuracy is between 10 and 30. Now I want to add other cases. I could write else if accuracy is greater than 30 but below 60, write that in here, else print, I don't know, no, for example. Okay, if I run that, I will print no, because the accuracy is 95. It is not nor in this condition, neither in this condition nor in this one. But if I have 50, okay, I will get in this statement. Okay, now you know how to use, and also you could have lots of other cases in here. Okay, and instead of and, you could also have or. Okay, which is the or between two conditions. The and condition means that it should be the first condition should be satisfied and the second one should be satisfied, both together. But when you have or, means that means or, like languages. Okay, until now we know how to use conditions, and now we know about the primitive variables in Python, which is great. Now you could write very simple programs in Python. So in the next sessions we will introduce to list and other advanced ways for storing data. Okay, hope to see you there. Bye.